3 days to draft day, and if you're watching this, it means you're like me and you're pretty excited. We have the 33rd overall pick in this year's draft, which is not like the 4th overall pick, and yet I'm just as excited as I was last year in terms of the names being thrown around and watching the tape of some of the players that we might be able to get. So much so that I've developed some draft prospect crushes, and you're probably like me, you want 2, 3, 4 of these guys. Can I have one of each, please? Because the list of players that the Raptors have invited to work out for them has some names on it that I'm absolutely in love with. The question I'm asking in this video is, how can I get 2 of them? I want more than one. I'm greedy. So that's the first thing we're gonna take a look at. The second thing we're gonna look at is just like a little trip in the time machine. I find the trades in the NBA to be so interesting. If you look closely at our pick at number 33, it's not our original pick. We got it through San Antonio. It's actually from Detroit. And you can see it's very convoluted. It mentions Washington and Chicago here. Later, you'll notice that our pick is now with Golden State, but it went to them through Philly. For shits and giggles, you can go to the timestamps below, and at the end of the video, we're gonna take a look at how these picks got where they are now. So if you think that sounds excellent, hop in my time machine, and ultimately, we're gonna take a little trip down memory lane. Now, if you're looking at who the Raptors are interested in a little late in the game, I've made a playlist that's available through my channel. So you just go to the channel, go to the playlist titled Raptors 2022 Draft Prospects, and you can browse through the scouting videos on YouTube. And the list includes players not just on the invite list for workouts for the Raptors, but also players on the list that Raptors fans that I have spoken to over the last month or so have been saying, hey, I like this guy, hey, I like that guy. So enjoy the playlist, guys. You all helped create it. Scotty Dimes all dialed in. Yes, 2 birds with 1 stone. The 1 stone being that 33rd overall pick.
Gubs!
Oh, hey, Jack. I was going to ask you, what would you say if I told you we could turn our 33rd overall pick into 2 second-rounders?
That's awesome. I am pumped up, excited.
Phew, I'm so relieved, Jack. Now, some people are saying maybe we should move up in the draft and trade Malachi or Yuta, Bonga, Svi, someone like that. What do you think of that notion?
Get that garbage out of here!
I agree. Get that garbage out of here, Jack. I think they're being very hasty, and I think we need to look at those contracts first. We'll do that in the next video. For now, let's assume we're just gonna use our second rounder, and if we talk to these teams,
bonjour,
we can potentially pull it off. So the strategy is simple. We're gonna market our 33rd overall pick to some teams that draft twice after us in the hopes that one of them wants to move up and get the better player who's gonna go earlier in the draft. Now, the consequences of this are obvious, because if we do this, we're definitely not going to get Jalen Williams. We're definitely not going to get Dalen Terry. We're definitely not going to get a guy I like Justin Lewis or Caleb Houston. We're moving back. But if your draft target is like mine, Trevion Williams, a guy that I want to help my bench now, but that can still develop, and a guy like, say, Andrew Nembhard, so say I want to get those 2 players out of the draft instead of just Jalen Williams, I could move back in the draft by marketing this 33rd pick to a team that drafts twice after. Now, there's only 6 teams that have 2 picks after us in the draft. So we need to find out which of Cleveland, Portland, Golden State, the Kings, the Pelicans, and the Timberwolves might be interested in doing this kind of scenario. How do we figure that out? It's actually fairly straightforward because it has to do with roster size. So as you can see here, in the offseason, teams are able to sign up to 20 contracts. That could be 20 regular contracts, or it could be 18 regular contracts and 2 two-way contracts. But before the regular season starts, they have to get that down to a maximum of 2 two-way contracts and 15 regular contracts. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at the rosters for each of the 6 teams here, and we're gonna decide, are any of them more likely to trade us 2 picks for 1, because they already kind of have the main part of their roster figured out. And that makes them more likely to want to add 1 player of quality over 2 players of presumably lesser quality. So step 1 is to look at our own roster, and as you can see, there's definitely room to add more players to our Summer League roster, and then establish later who we're going to keep for the regular season as our two-way players, as our main roster. and we can make some decisions on Armani Brooks, Yuta, Isaac Bonga, all those guys later. I want to add Trevion and Andrew Nembhard ideally. So I want to do this 2-for-1 thing, and we have the room to do it. Now, is Cleveland likely to trade with us? I'm going to say right away, no, because we're conference rivals, and that is not something you typically want to do for your competition, is improve them. Portland's a little different. They say they're going for it, but in my opinion, they have a lot of room to grow, and I think ultimately they're going to be moving off of Dame Lillard. So I think they're going to keep all their picks. Now here's where it gets interesting. New Orleans, if you count them up, basically has their regular season roster already. So they might be auditioning for a role or two, but they have a lot of picks. I think they're a likely candidate to want to do something like this. Golden State, same thing. Sacramento, same thing. They've got a pretty good, well-established top 15, assuming they re-sign guys like Jeremy Lamb and DiVincenzo. And I think they're pretty much set. They have a lot of guaranteed contracts that they can't even get off of. So I think they're similar. And another one is Minnesota. They already have the bulk of their team established, and they're only auditioning for two-way contracts, really. So they don't need all of the picks that they have in the second round. So these make them good candidates, and these are the guys that I would target. So that's how I would get 2-for-1 without trading an actual player. What do you think of my strategy, and what do you think about Trevion Williams and Nembhard? Would you substitute those two players and still trade back and go 2-for-1, or would you just solidify a player at 33 and stick with him? You're like a huge Jalen Williams fan. I get it. He looks so great. Tell me in the comments what you would do. But now let's have some fun, jump in the time machine, and see where these picks came from. Okay, so here is the shell game that is NBA draft picks. You can see the 20th overall pick San Antonio has, and it's from Toronto. So most of you will remember that the history of this is the completion of the Kyle Lowry trade. So we moved Goran Dragic to San Antonio along with our 20th overall pick, it turned out to be, in exchange for Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks, and Detroit's 33rd overall pick in this year's draft. And then Drew Eubanks was released in order to create enough cap space to bring in Armani Brooks, who will probably enter the summer league on our roster to be tested out for a spot. Okay, and that brings us to this totally convoluted pick at 33. How the heck does it get so complicated here that it's Toronto's pick, but it came originally from Detroit via San Antonio, who we got it from, but then also Washington and Chicago. And the best site to figure this stuff out is NBA Futures. And if we go to Detroit, we see 22 second round pick to Toronto. And it explains all the trades that are involved. And if you actually follow the cookie crumbs here, you realize that a lot of this has to do with the Russell Westbrook trade last year that sent Kuzma and a whole bunch of stuff to Washington. And there's also a previous Chicago trade for the original Detroit pick. So here's how it plays out. San Antonio receives the LA Lakers second rounder. Toronto receives the more favorable of Chicago's second round pick and Detroit's second round pick. So that's why we're getting the Detroit one. And Sacramento will receive the less favorable of the two. That ends up being right here, 49, Chicago's pick. And look, it still involves Memphis and Detroit. So very, very, very convoluted. And if you keep reading, you'll see it's even more convoluted, involving LA, Indiana, Brooklyn, that was the Westbrook trade, Memphis, Sacramento, Chicago, Washington. This is how crazy these picks can be. But that leads us to our original second rounder. And this is the one that I think Raptors fans will have the most fun remembering, because it led to that parade that you see me and my kids down there in 2019. So in 2019, at the trade deadline, we sent Malachi Richardson, the second rounder, and the rights to Amar Predslick, who I don't even know who he is. He was bounced, his rights were bounced around tons of times. And we sent him to Philly to make roster space for Marc Gasol. But where the hell did Imar what's-his-name come from? Well, you can check out Wikipedia, as I did for fun today. And what you find is that his rights, he's never been in the NBA. His rights bounced all over the place. We ended up getting him when we moved Cory Joseph to Indiana. And ironically, the Cory Joseph trade has connections to bringing in Marc Gasol as a result. So you can thank Cory Joseph, in part, for his role he played in bringing us Marc Gasol, which eventually brought us a banner in Scotiabank Center. I hope you enjoyed this little follow on what happens where these picks go, and I hope you enjoy the draft. Kawhi, what do you think of my idea to trade the 33rd overall pick back for 2 picks, for 2 role players to improve our bench, which we desperately need? What do you know, fun guy? Cheers, guys. It's all about the Larrys.
This is Chef's Kiss approved. Mwah!